Thank you, Brianna. Um, Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you all for coming to this conversation. My name is Alex Jitianu. I work for Syncrosoft, the company that develops the Oxygen XML editor set of tools for more than 15 years now. And I wear many hats in the company. I am part product evangelist, part development lead, a bit of support engineer. And from this unique position, I would say, I try to understand how people are using our products and see how we can evolve them to better suit their requirements. So a short summary of what I've presented in this presentation. So the root idea here is that software development has been around for decades, and during this time it faced many challenges. Some of which are similar to those encountered today by documentation teams. So it makes sense to understand what solution they found to these problems and see how they can be applied to documentation. If the documentation is one of for a software product, then it makes even more sense to do this because chances are the software development team already has these workflows in place. So it's even easier for the documentation team to jump on the train and use the same workflows. Also from, like I said, from my unique position as a software, as a development lead, but also product evangelist, I work with these workflows and tools, and I understand their values. So I'm quite excited to talk about them and help the adoption by the documentation teams. So this is exactly what the Docs as Code philosophy it's all about, working with the same tools and workflows as code. I've talked about how you should choose a suitable text markup. It can be any markup language. It can be Markdown, which is quite popular, but also XML, something that people perhaps wouldn't consider when thinking about the Docs as Code initiative, and with the docbook and DITA as possible XML vocabularies. I've talked about the benefits of using a version control system to store versions, to empower collaboration and review. We've briefly discussed what the version control system are out there, like Git or Subversion. They can be in the cloud, on our premise. We've talked about notions like continuous integration, which it's a technique in which changes are validated as soon as they are committed by creating a build, running automated tests. What we can automate for a documentation project? Well, we have various quality checks. We can write business rules in Schematron or Veil, depending on what markup language we've chosen. We can have integrity checks, like checking to see if all the resources are there, no broken links. If you have profiling, then these checks, integrity checks, are even more valuable because they will catch those situations in which a deliverable is missing required content. Of course, the publishing pipelines, translation packages, all these can be automated. Continuous delivery, again, it's helpful, which means that your deliverables are always ready to go to production just by clicking a button. And what collaboration options we have, depending on what version control system we've chosen. Another recommendation in DocX code is to have issue tracking, and also a few words about editing tools. I've presented an example of a DocX code setup in which I've chosen the DITA and Markdown as the markup language. The version control system was GitHub, the issue tracker, the one built in GitHub. For continuous integration and deployment, we've chosen Netlify and Sonar Cloud. And for collaboration, we had some links embedded in the publish output that allowed us to edit the source documents and save them, and then the continuous integration pipelines fired into action and published our documents and run all the quality checks and all the DocX code setup. So I'm curious to see your questions, to see what ideas sparked into your mind, and yeah, and see how we can best apply this a DocX code setup to documentation. So that was my very short, I hope, summary recap. So are any of you using such techniques?
So I'll go. My name's Dawn Bunting. I work at ServiceNow, and we've been trying to work with DocX code for a while now. And one of the things that we're looking at now is rethinking through our branching strategy for the versioning of the docs. We use Git and Jenkins. We use Oxygen, and then the authors check in via Git. And we have, of course, like many companies, we have many versions of the documentation that go out because there's many versions of the product that go out. And I was just wondering if you have any suggestions on how to put up a branching and merging strategy for many products, many families of releases. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Git has also has a recommended model for branching, the so-called flow model, Git Flow, I think it's called, in which you create feature branches when working on free features, and then you have also hot fixes that get merged back into the main branches. But I guess that it's something to decide after analyzing how your products relate to each other.
And would the Oxygen authoring tool just have a project in each one of those branches? Is that the right way to do it?
Yes, that would be a good approach. Well, an Oxygen project, it's helpful because it stores a lot of settings and that are specific to that particular project. And a good place for the project to sit is where the documents are, in this case in Git. So if the project sits in Git, then it will go with whatever branching model you will choose.
Hello, I'm George. I'm George Bina. I'm Alex's colleague.
Hi, George.
From Microsoft. My advice will be to try to mirror the versioning that you have for the products. This is also what we do with our documentation. So we mirror, because our development happens in Git and in Subversion on a different repository, but the documentation is generally available, is made public on GitHub. And we mirror with the branches that we have in the documentation, we mirror the product branches. So we do not use actually the Git Flow model, but we do have, when we make a new release, we create a tag with that version. And then from that tag, we create a hotfix branch. Like now we have hotfixes 23.1, the latest hotfix branch.
Okay,
And
so you have a 23.1 hotfix branch, okay.
Yes, and the 23.0 and the 22.1 and the 22.0. And for example, at some point we need to make a new build. For instance, maybe there is a security issue or there's a new Java version that does not work anymore. So that Oxygen does not work on Mac, for instance, on a latest release. And then we need to go back to 22.0 or the products that are still supported, that are not in end of life. And then we need to make some new builds, and that may require some updates also to the documentation. In that case, we go to the hotfix is 22.1, for instance, if we need to make a release for 22, and we apply some changes, rebuild the documentation from that branch, and then publish with the corresponding product, 22.1, for instance.
So do you have a branch for each one of the products? You have a branch for author and a branch for editor and a branch for, or do you keep it all together?
We have a common release cycle for author and developer.
Okay.
But yeah, we do have for Content Fusion and other products, the release cycle is a bit different and the documentation is the same. And I think we make some tags or additional branches if needed. So the main idea in general is to follow and mirror what the product does, because then you will be in sync with the product and you will not have two different systems and try to make them, fit together. If they have the same pattern, they will just fit naturally.
Okay, so basically match the branching to the publishing structure. Or to the product publishing.
The product that you are documenting. This
Right.
is what we do, and I think that's probably the best approach, as I said, because you do not have an impedance mismatch. They will just fit together perfectly.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Kind of to follow up on that question, we're kind of like halfway to building our own DOCSIS code environment, and our challenge right now is that we have too many products that are stored in different repositories, where we prefer to have a more combined repository so we can improve reuse. So any recommendations on how to approach this?
Yeah, I understand. So it probably would have been a lot easier if all the products sit in the same environment. Like, for example, if all of them were in GitHub or in a Git repositories, then you would have been able to use sub modules to have the same warehouse topics and bring them with submodules in all the repositories. But if they are in different version control systems, then I'm not sure. Maybe
there isn't much, right?
Maybe some dependency management like Maven or Gradle may bring in some libraries. Actually,
somehow, yes.
I think there is a need actually for DITA for documentation in general to think about this idea of dependency management somehow. So then you can bring in different modules as libraries, let's say, that are read-only for your project in a way, but you can make references to them. So that's probably possible with the script, but that means that you cannot start editing immediately in a project. You need to run that script first to bring in the warehouse topics, for instance, with the reusable parts and so on, and then the project will work. I've seen this approach because we had one of our users asked us, they had issues in that case with accessing the content directly with the web author directly on the Git repository, because those dependencies are not on the repository, right? So then having that, the need to run a script to bring in some additional content, it means that you cannot directly then access the Git repository because some dependencies will be missing unless you do some, I don't know, maybe a catalog to resolve the dependency for the web author to bring it from the original location, to point to the original location when you access that. So that's one way of doing it that I think it was used successfully. And it was presented at one of the DITA conferences. I think it was Lionel from that company with the sound systems, Lionel.
I'll try to search for it.
So yeah, so it should be somewhere in the DITA Europe archives or something.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Vlad, I'll try and help you find that on our side.
Lionel Moiseau, I think.
Appreciate it.
No problem.
Sorry, I was typing notes. And then another question. So, you know, right now we're, like I said, we're kind of halfway there. You know, we're using Oxygen pretty much your entire portfolio of products. We store everything in Git, specifically Bitbucket in our case. We use Jira for issue tracking, etc. And right now we're starting to look into building the automation for, you know, continuous integration. So any recommendations in terms of how to avoid any kind of mistakes as we venture towards that? Any best practices?
Well, sounds interesting. When if you're already using Git, Jira, nice idea would be to we have, for example, in our company we also use DITA and our tools to write the documentation, and we've integrated them into Jira. What I mean is that whenever we commit, for example, when we write documentation, when and we committed, when developers write code and they committed, they use that Jira ID. And then a script runs, and in Jira you see what files were modified on that particular issue, and you have some links in which you can use the web author to edit those files, and or to see the differences, the old version and the new version. That might be something interesting to do with Jira.
I know, yeah, I know that we're well, most of us are already using the Jira ID when we do our commit. So that part's down, but I wasn't aware of the additional links to see the changes in the files, or even, you know, the web author portion of it. But
yeah, we'll need to explore that and see what we can develop and leverage that across everything.
I can try to share my screen and show you a bit of how that looks like. Hopefully,
thank you.
It will just work. So you see here, it's a Jira issue. And then when a change to the documentation was made, we have a script that automates and creates this entry in Jira that says this topic was modified, and you can get access to the diff, which basically calls the web author and points to two different revisions of that file. And then if you click on this, it should show the diff between you see here. It shows the part that was changed. So it's our visual diff here. And then you can see how the content looks like published. So it gets you directly to the, we publish with a continuous integration. So you see this is on our internal network. And then if you need as a developer to, you know, maybe once you see the diff, so it's this in the validate with part, you can also read it here. And maybe you see that, I don't know, something is not technically correct and you need to add something, then you can just follow the source link and you are immediately in front of the topic in editable form, and you can perform some changes and commit to, you know, like it was this part, I think, or this validate with. So I can say, so I delete this, for instance, and when I save, I can say I want to send a pull request against the documentation, so that our technical writer will review that, for instance, and then we can see this even now on GitHub. We have some checks like the sign off part, and I didn't put that here, but you can see, you know, the change, and it may be merged into the documentation. As you can see, we have our documentation generally available, but towards our next release, we also have another private repository that share the same revisions, but it's a bit ahead of the public one.
Of course.
Yeah, so yeah, but the nice thing is that as a developer, you do not need, you worked on this issue and you want to review the content of what changed in the documentation for this particular issue, and you just follow, you know, a couple of links and you see exactly what changed here. Then you see how the topic, the modified topic will look like when it will be published. You also have edit online here. So as you review, you can also reach the target topic following this link, or directly from the issue, you can just click on the source and get again to the modified topic and apply any changes that you may need.
So here's kind of another question. You know, you went directly into Git. We use a source tree right now to connect to Bitbucket. Do you recommend, you know, bypassing it and having writers work directly in Git, or, you know, like, you know, are we doing kind of the right thing using source tree as a more of a
Yes.
user-friendly UI for it, so to speak?
So the web author has a direct connector to GitHub, And you can have either protected branches, so people will not be able to directly commit on them, but send you a pull request, and then somebody will accept that, will review that, and then accept the pull request. If users do not have access to write access to the repository, then the web author will automatically enter on the pull request workflow and will fork automatically and send the pull request when somebody will modify that content. Going through another Git client, then remove this possibility to just click and edit, you know. So that's and also
Right.
the desktop version of Oxygen includes a Git client right now that
I was about
helps.
to say that.
Yeah. Sorry, Alex.
No, it's okay. Yeah. Good
I'm
thing you
stealing your
remembered.
section.
They should try that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we are thinking to make available this script that we are using, of course, with the security parts and so on, so that more people can use this kind of integration with Jira, because the integration with Jira, it's just 1 or 2 lines that send a message inside the Jira ticket. But you can integrate in a similar way with another issue tracking system. Because the main idea with this approach is that, and I think one of the main advantages of using a web editor is the fact that you can get to edit a topic just by following a URL. It's not like a desktop tool that you go into the browser and browse to open files. The power of this is that editing is just a click away, and that URL can be embedded in a PDF document, can be embedded in Jira, can be embedded in web help. You know, you can place where in an email, you can place it anywhere.
Thank you. And I'm sure I'm not the only one, but if you do share the script, I'm sure it will be greatly appreciated and helpful.
So there's a question on the chat, Alex.
Oh, we have a chat, yes.
There's a chat, yes. Can I claim I doc as code because I'm using only code tools? Asks Norwen.
Well, I think it's more about the workflows as well, because the tools are there to empower the workflows. So I think I hope this answers your question. So from my point of view, the workflows are more important. The continuous integration, all the quality checks applied whenever the automation, yes, the continuous delivery that's there, so you can publish with just a button click.
Yeah, I guess I can just talk up if we're not too many in the room. Hi, George. Nice meeting you. Virtually, hi, Alex and Vlad and
Hello.
Brianna and Pam. I probably know a little bit more people in the room, but I just wanted to ask because I see more and more. I have some friends and they're like, oh, but now there's this trend as docs as code, but they already have automation and workflow and stuff, and it's a little unsettling for some of them, and it's and that's why I'm asking, you know, what are the conditions of the doc as code, because it's becoming a catchphrase, right? It's becoming its own philosophy. So I think you even used the word philosophy there during the presentation. So I'm trying to find, what are the boundaries for that. And also, if there is another question, which is DevOps, do you think that doc as code matches with DevOps or doesn't? Or you don't want to answer that question? Tricky.
Well, yes, bringing operation and yeah, I'm not sure how to tackle that question.
So
you
DevOps is usually needed to set up these pipelines, these scripts, this automation. It's part of their job usually. So you can't expect a technical writer necessarily to set up Jenkins to do automating builds and so on. Not necessarily, because sometimes they do not have the rights to do that on that platform. So you need to collaborate a bit with the infrastructure from your company to set things up. But of course, I mean, in the demo projects that we've done, for instance, we set up Travis with GitHub because the integration was there, and you just put a .travis file with the scripts, and you click a couple of buttons and it starts to working. So
and that's also
do not have DevOps training and things like that. So all these are a lot closer to everyone now when there are just a couple of clicks and setup and things start to work. So it's a democratization, let's say, of the DevOps for everyone.
Yeah. Did you get many questions around Markdown and DITA content, like mixing up these two? I know that the DITA Open Toolkit has been doing quite a lot regarding that, as an output. But it's kind of, for me, it's kind of linked to having SMEs writing in software plus having the tech pubs and then some kind of mixing all that through a publishing channel or an automation. And did you get that a lot? Yeah, I'll be there in 2 minutes. Yeah, 2 minutes.
Well, I had a few conversations in which these two languages mixed. The big part was DITA, and there were like release notes or technical things written in Markdown. So, but I'm not sure to what extent these kind of projects have caught up.
I'm not sure at all, because we see some questions, but then we don't know if the projects have actually gone through, or they do things differently. Sometimes we know, but most of the times we don't have the outcome. We don't really know what happened.
But there are also documentation projects written entirely in Markdown as well, and these docs as code workflows can be applied similarly for Markdown or DITA. So they are agnostic of the language as long as it's a plain text
markup. Okay. Well, I need to dash off. I'm sorry, but it was nice seeing your faces. I hope you're all fine, and I'll speak with you very soon. Sorry to barge in and barge out again. Bye. Thanks.
No problem.
Bye, Brianna.
Hi, this is Zoe. This is maybe a bit specific, and it's probably in somewhere on a spec sheet, but you have your fabulous editing links in the editor, which I love the idea of, and your examples all with GitHub. do you work with any of the on-prem tools, something like Perforce? Or the ones where you have to check something out and then check it back in?
You are muted, Alex.
I said I think we have a Perforce connector as well, right, George? For WebAuthor.
I also know that we have a Perforce connector, but it's for on-premise version. I personally haven't tried the edit links with that, but I guess it should work. So yeah, we should take a note maybe and try it out. And but basically, you need the web author and the Perforce connector installed on an enterprise distribution. And then all you need to do is to just open the DITA map in the web editor and copy that URL. And then when you transform to PDF or web help, you can just find that there is an edit link DITA map URL or something like that.
A parameter.
And paste a parameter for the DITA OT plugin. And then you paste that URL, and that is enough to generate the edit links. So it's just one parameter. Yeah. Then
but if you contact us on our email addresses, then maybe we can help with step-by-step procedure, put you on track. I think you're muted, Zoe, if you wanted to say something.
So coming back a bit to the Markdown, Alex actually worked a lot on that part to enable schematron validation, for instance, over Markdown documents, which we were thinking that was a bit of the missing part, because you cannot communicate in any way with users, with authors, with people that create the Markdown content. And with the schematron validation, basically you can check different parts of the Markdown and provide some messages as they write the content. And in this way, you can try to keep that structured and then be able to process that as your pipeline expects, let's say. So that's one of the things we put a lot of work on to try to bring some of the support that we have for structured formats also in the Markdown world. So Zoe wrote on the chat that she was not able to unmute for some reason. Thank you. I'm still in the early stages of planning. I like to know what tools are in my toolbox before I get started. And you folks have a lot of great tools. Thanks.
I'm gonna just sort of brainstorm and talk at the same time. This is Dawn again. One of the things that we come across is that with the schematron tools, which we love, sometimes are, so we have a lot of different families that we support at the same time. And there are different rules, schematron rules, that we want to have for specific projects. And as I'm talking, there might be a really obvious answer to this, but we haven't implemented it. We have all our rules in one place. And what I'm wondering is if you guys have like different rule sets in different places, and then just have different Git or different projects, Oxygen projects reference different rule sets depending on the project, or the way we do it is the way that it needs to be done. It has to be sort of centralized.
Take me. Yes, we, in our case, we do not have this complex setup. We have just one set of rules for our user guide. Mm-hmm. But what we played with was to build an intelligent style guide where the rules are within the style guide topics. And this intelligent style guide is in DITA, is created in DITA. So basically you can kind of profile and pick the topics that you want from the style guide. And then you have those specific rules, because the schematron rules are generated dynamically from the style guide that you construct. So let's say you, so the project is on GitHub. It was developed actually with the context services initially. They provided a kind of style guide, and I created some rules to automate what was written in the style guide. And those rules are annotation within the style guide topics. So basically, when the schematron is generated, so if you do not include a topic, let's say about short descriptions with different limits and so on, you do not get those rules. Or you may have, like 3 topics about short descriptions. And in for one product, we include one of those topics. From another, you include another one. It may be a key definition that points to a different topic.
Okay.
And then you build also the style guide, so people can also read what you expect them to do, what rules you expect them to follow for that specific product. And that generates also the corresponding rules exactly for what they read for that product. So, yeah. But Schematron also has a modular approach, so you can include different schemas and
that part I figured out. I've seen your style guide before, and I've never sort of wrapped my mind around installing it, but maybe I'll reach out after this and
what I want to add is that's once you have these different schematron files for different products, then yes, you can put them in different projects. I mean, because you use Oxygen project files, means you can have different schematron for each project file, for each product.
Don, you should check out Alex and George's colleague's presentation, Octavian. He did a presentation all about schematron, and it was, I'm not surprised you weren't there because it was a little earlier time. I was there and it was real early. So you should check that out, because he did demonstrate both these ideas of different project files with different schematron associated with them. He showed different validation scenarios being set up with different schematron files, and he did show a little bit of the dynamic style guide rules. So probably all of those things would be helpful for you to see in action. And then once you've taken a look at that, of course, I'm going to speak on behalf of George and Alex and Octavian and say that they'll be happy to answer your questions.
They always are. They always are. Yeah, that's great. That's one of the jewels of the conference already. All right, I'll just keep going. So as far as workflow, I've heard a bunch of tools tossed around. Do you guys use Jenkins, or do you use something else to do out your builds?
Yes, we have a Jenkins server.
Do you use what is it called?
Pipelines.
Pipelines. Thank you. Whoever that angel in the dark is. Yeah, pipelines. We just started using pipelines, and we find that very useful. But I was just we use Jenkins, and then I know that there's sort of some Maven stuff going on over in the build side of things, and I was just wondering if anybody else has any anything that they're having a lot of success with a specific thing that you do after you get the documentation. We have it checked in as Git with Eclipse, which we're trying to get away from, and then it goes into our build servers, and then Jenkins automated builds with pipelines and continuous integration, right? So check in, build on commit, and then that publishes out to Zoomin automatically. Anybody have anything working better for them than that?
So Jenkins pipelines are a suite of plugins for continuous delivery pipelines. I see. I'm not sure if we use them or not. But when we do the continuous delivery, I think we use the how is it called, George? The publishing engine, the Oxygen publishing engine.
So we actually, in the last development cycle, let's say, we pushed a bit more on the automation part. So we extracted the DITA Open Toolkit from Oxygen with the web help plugin and with chemistry and with what you have in Oxygen as an Oxygen publishing engine, so it can be used outside of Oxygen. Trying to make it easier for people that set up things in Oxygen, then they work fine, and then they need to run this on a automated system where there's no user to start Oxygen and to start the transformation from Oxygen. So yeah, we try to do that. We also extracted the scripting license that gives access to a number of tools, including some of the plugins like the batch converter plugin. So you can use from a script conversions from different formats to DITA, for instance. And yeah, we added a lot of functionality actually in this scripting, which is kind of a new product, the scripting and the publishing engine that try to extract things out of Oxygen. I think we also made so if you have a transformation scenario in Oxygen setup, you can run that through the scripting through a command line or something like that, if I remember correctly.
I will say for other folks who aren't doing this, I use the scripting license to run the schematron set of rules. So you can extract your schematron set of rules and then run them sort of. It's a way to keep the authors honest, because like they'll have a schematron rule in front of them and it'll be this red squiggly line and they'll still ignore it, right? And so once a week or whatever, we have that just run via a script, and then we send it off to all the managers that say, here are all the validation errors that are still in the product, even though they got a schematron red squiggle for it. And it tends to keep people more honest with actually paying attention to the schematron stuff that pops up in front of them. So I would say that's something that has helped us a lot in our workflow.
I think Alex presented in his session something like this, but pushing this through to Sonar Cloud, right, Alex?
Right.
Which aggregates these reports, and
so it was a way to present them. I'm not sure what do you do with the. So yeah, it's just a way of presenting the results of the schematron validation and validate and check for completeness. It was an idea. I mean, it depends. You could write emails to the writers, or to make them aware that the build is failing and these are the causes.
Yeah, that's what I'm sort of looking for, because we always want to walk the balance between keeping the content pristine and public shaming, right? We don't want to, on one hand, we want it to be right, and we don't want to point fingers too often. So we've been trying to find paths to present that information without people feeling like they're being picked on, right? So Sonar Cloud, can you just say a little bit more about what that is? So is it a free tool that you can send this stuff to?
Well, I know that you can also put it on premise. It's called Sonar Cube. So it makes static checks in the code, in documents, but what I've used it for was just like a way of presenting the results. The actual checks were not done by Sonar Cloud, but were done by the schematron inside the continuous integration system. But I needed a place where to present nicely these issues. And so I used the REST API from Sonar Cloud to push the results. Now, I think Sonar Cloud can also be configured to send notification emails when these issues appear, internally for software development, we use such a deployment of Sonar, and when it statically checks the source code, and then it notifies developers when new issues arise. So
that's interesting. I'll have to look into that.
So a possibility is that if you run this, for instance, after a commit, and that commit breaks creates some validation issues, you may notify the person that committed,
yes.
So that there's no public shame, let's say, but you notify him to maybe correct his commit.
Yeah. We find that works well, that they know that we're following up one way or the other. Because we can do it, it's build breakers, it's style guide rules, it's a whole bunch of different levels of things that we check.
So there's about 5 minutes left, so time for one more question or a couple really fast ones, whatever people might have.
I'll just do the gush fangirl thing and say we just love your products. And just thank you for being out there and doing what you do, because it just makes all of our lives so much better.
Thank you very much. So you're not using the built-in Git client in Oxygen.
Yeah, but it's not you, it's me. We early on did it wrong with branching and merging, and so we have really bloated repositories, and so we basically didn't let Git do Git's master slice of tracking content by branching properly. And so we would completely copy the repository and then duplicate it and then check it back in, rather than letting Git like just keep track of the differences. And so after, I don't know, it started at the F release and we're on the Q release. So it's like a long time of doing that. And things are just so bloated that that nothing can keep up. I mean, whenever we like change a branch, it's like 2 minutes before the reflection of the new branch is in that content instead of the old branch. And so what we're going to do hopefully this year is go through a process of sort of resetting and cleansing and just making a new master and then just really branching properly. And then I wholeheartedly know deep in my soul, we'll use your Git client. We just haven't, we don't give you a fighting chance because there's just so much out there of the same file that should just be a quick diff it looks like a whole new thing. So, yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. We're looking forward to getting there. We're just not there yet, because that's exactly what our writers need, is that continuous integration. I was actually talking to somebody at a different company yesterday who was just saying how you guys have really made that client really wonderful, and that it really works really well these days, and the latest releases, and we're looking forward to being able to get to use it. I just want to read what Zoe said before we lose the thing. So you pull from master into a working branch. Polls during the command line. Okay.
Yeah, we have plans to improve that a lot.
So
in the
that's the merge, no? She's here, the merge action.
It's the good thing is that you can combine different Git clients. So I also use Oxygen with source tree, so with Git, and it works quite well. But with the Git client from within Oxygen, there are some specific features that we added in particular for technical writers. For instance, if you work on a branch and somebody pulls on that branch, pushes on that branch, you are notified as a writer, and you can pull from that branch, and you keep more up to date if you are using, let's say, like working on a main dev branch, let's say, or something like that. Then you are notified. If you are using feature branches, then chances are that you are alone on that feature branch, let's say.
Yeah, we're big enough now that nobody's ever alone. So that's a really nice feature to know when you're not, because it also helps them avoid conflicts when they know that something else is.
Minimize these conflicts, yes.
Yeah.
Also, what is nice is our diff tools with the three-way XML merge can be integrated with external clients like SourceTree or other Git clients. And then when you need to resolve a conflict, you can benefit of the three-way XML aware merge and the visual diff that we provide. So I was lost without, when I worked on some documentation without our diff client that is XML aware, it's almost impossible to reconcile, all the changes, especially if the formatting, was applied and there are 1,000 lines modified, but the content is actually the same in reality. And it gets complex.
Yeah, I'll play with
Yeah.
that. I'll definitely play with that.
Yeah, George, I didn't know that you could integrate that. And so I need to go tell one of my clients. They were just having a horrible time with that just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, yeah. So you can look at the documentation. We have instructions, I think, for a number of Git clients how to set up the as an external div tool. You can place our div, which is included with the editor, author, and developer product. So
yeah, I was
okay.
playing with that, doing just because I've just gone back to the Git command line as my happy place, and I just like 3 days ago tried to do the merge tool thing, and I haven't. I've seen that you guys have instructions for it, but I haven't actually done it. So I will definitely try that this week and track you down if I can't get it to work. I think we're at time. I'm gonna go get some tea.
Oh yeah, we are. Thank you for doing my job for me, Don. I always need someone to do it.
I just needed the tea.
Yeah, thank you, Alex and George as an assistant there. And I will talk to all of you throughout the rest of the conference, I'm sure.
See ya.
See you. Bye.
goodbye. Thanks all for your questions.